Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Ellie Richardson. For over a year, the economic ties between Washington and New Delhi have been stretched to a breaking point by trade wars, reciprocal levies and geopolitical friction over energy. But in February 2026, the narrative changed with a single post from Mar-a-Lago. President Trump took to Truth Social to announce a landmark US-India trade agreement, a deal he claims will rewrite the rules of commerce in the Indo-Pacific. Let's dive into the details. President Trump announced that after a high-stakes call with Prime Minister Modi, the United States is slashing tariffs on Indian goods from a punitive 50% down to 18%. Until yesterday, Indian exports faced a daunting 50% wall, a combination of 25% reciprocal tariff and an additional 25% penalty imposed last August over Indians' continued purchase of Russian oil. In return, Trump claims that India has committed to the zero tariff dream and will move to eliminate tariffs and non-tariff barriers on US products entirely, giving American goods unfettered access to the world's most populous market. However, as of this moment, no such claim has been confirmed by India. But this isn't just a tariff reset, it's a massive procurement pact. Trump revealed that India has committed to buy American at an unprecedented scale, pledging to purchase over $500 billion worth of US energy, technology, agriculture and coal in the coming years, perhaps the most critical geopolitical concession. Trump claims that India has agreed to halt its purchases of Russian crude oil, shifting its sourcing to the United States and Venezuela, a move Trump says is vital to ending the war in Ukraine. What does this mean on the ground for the common citizen and global markets? The impact is already being felt. Markets in India have surged, with the gift Nifty soaring nearly 800 points overnight. The rupee, which had been under pressure throughout 2025, is expected to strengthen as uncertainty dissipates. For Indian exporters in sectors like gems, jewellery and textiles, the 18% rate is a lifeline. It gives Indian products a competitive edge over rivals in Vietnam and Bangladesh, who currently face tariffs in the 19% to 20% range. However, there is a concern in rural India. The deal opens up the Indian agriculture sector to American farm products, leading to fears among local farmers about falling prices and increased competition from US agri-giants. The scale of this economic partnership is already staggering. In 2024 alone, bilateral trade in goods and services reached a $212.3 billion, reinforcing momentum that is redefining global commerce. As India's total exports hit a record-breaking $825 billion in the last fiscal year, the United States emerged as the critical frontier, consuming over 13% of that total volume. But these records are merely the baseline. Both nations are now charging towards an ambitious $500 billion target by 2030. Transforming what was once a steady flow of goods into a high-velocity economic engine. So, what's the bottom line? Critics argue the deal is purely transactional, a trade-off of energy sovereignty for market access, but supporters see it as ultimate revitalization of the China Plus One strategy, positioning India as the preferred global manufacturing hub for the West. As Prime Minister Modi put it, when the world's largest democracies work together, the opportunities are limitless. Whether this mega partnership delivers prosperity to the grassroots or just the balance sheets remains to be seen. We are now being joined by Mitiali Nakore, who's an economist who's joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today. President Trump has claimed that India will move to zero tariffs for American goods, while Indian exports to the US will still face an 18% levy. From a trade balance perspective, does this reciprocal deal actually put Indian manufacturers at a long-term disadvantage, or is the 18% rate a secondary concern compared to the sheer volume of the American market?
Thanks a lot for having me on the show and on this discussion. I think, it's quite an interesting timing to see this tweet from President Trump, because it comes literally the day after India released its national budget, and pretty much in the same week that India went into the mother of all deals with the EU, and the India-EU trade deal, full trade deal was signed. Firstly, I'd like to, just mention that until we see official documentation and official press releases from the government of India, a lot of this is mostly just to say that, there has been a thaw in relations, and this is just a tweet. So, the finer details of what a potential framework for renegotiation of tariffs, or if it will be a full-fledged trade deal, this actually remains to be seen, because a full-fledged trade deal is actually quite different from just an agreement of tariffs. And also, at this point in time, what we're seeing is that there are a lot of conditions that have been mentioned by President Trump in his tweet, and it remains to be confirmed whether those have been accepted by the government of India.
And by securing an 18% tariff rate, India now undercuts regional competitors like Vietnam, who've got 20%, Pakistan 19%. Is this 1 to 2% margin enough to trigger a massive shift of global China plus one manufacturing to India shores, or are infrastructure and labour laws still the bigger hurdles?
I think at this point in time, in today's economy, we have to stop speaking about India in all of these terms, because India has literally been the fastest growing economy in the world for the last decade. And, comparing India to developing economies like Pakistan or Bangladesh actually does disservice to the economies of Pakistan and Bangladesh, which are grappling with very severe fiscal consolidation issues and macroeconomic stability issues. India is an economy where our fiscal deficit to GDP ratio has remained at 4.4% or even below that, and we're on a path of fiscal consolidation. We're a thriving consumer market. We're an innovator in several sectors, and we have a massive technological base. We're a leader in several sectors, including space technology. So honestly, this comparison obviously doesn't stand. And even when we are comparing with China, again, it's a bit of a difficult comparison, because China is again an economy which is on a different path. It is far ahead in terms of the per capita income, and also on its manufacturing expansiveness. So I think India is a middle income power, and India has been working on its own strengths. And if you look at the budget that has just come out in India, again, it talks about indigenization of supply chains, domestic manufacturing, entering sectors like semiconductors and electronic components and EVs. So therefore, I think in this particular space, with this deal, what gets stronger is an investment potential for the US, because if you look at the thriving markets that India offers, clearly the US traders want to access these markets, and it is critical for them to invest in India to access these markets.
And the deal includes a commitment for India to purchase over $500 billion in American goods over the coming years. Considering India's total global goods imports were around $720 billion last year, does this commitment essentially lock India into dependency on US supply chains at the expense of our trade diversification on strategy?
So it doesn't. So firstly, we don't have a deal. I mean, we have a tweet. So the tweet says that India is supposed to purchase $500 billion of made goods and services. Again, it's not clear which all sectors this includes, whether this includes increased purchases of Venezuelan oil and even American energy products, technology, services, defense products and equipments, etc. And even coal is being discussed in this context. But also, it doesn't make it clear whether this is in just 1 year or if this is going to be spread over multiple years. Because if we look at the deal that Japan is currently operating on, that actually also entails a $500 billion investment and purchases of American-made goods, but it's spread over 5 years. So again, it remains to be seen whether this is going to be an annual commitment or a commitment spread over multiple years. I think the basic benefit and the basic moment of jubilation today for both economies is looking at the thaw in the relationship, because at the end of the day, Americans and Indians as people and as businesses and as civilizations, as democracies, are extremely close together. And the last year was actually an aberration in a relationship that has lasted very long. And it's almost like a reset of the relationship. The trust building has resumed. And I'm hopeful that this will signal a new era of trade and also investment coming into India from the United States.
Thank you so much, Mitali Nicole, for joining us here on Deep Dive. That is all we have time for today on this episode of Deep Dive. Keep up to date with NewsX World for our updates from around the world. Thank you.